Ben Shapiro is actually criticizing part of capitalism. Weird. Let me give you some context now. So recently, due to some of the recent mass shootings that have happened, both Walmart and Kroger have finally responded by saying that they were going to bar some customers from openly carrying guns in their stores. Walmart also said they would put some restrictions on selling ammunition. So now the right wing is having a little bit of a meltdown, as evidenced by recent tweets from Ben Shapiro. He said the left has found a new way of implementing policy from the top down. This is fun. Without the use of government, simply pressure massive corporations to do their political bidding. This is dangerous precedent and adds to the continuing polarization of the country. Are we now going to have politically segregated big box stores? So, wait, people not wanting to get shot while shopping at a Walmart, that somehow is adding to the polarization of the country. Wow. Okay, then. Uh, and it's also funny, it's coming from somehow the top down. So people organizing and saying, hey, you know what? It turns out I'm really not happy with Walmart having an open carrying policy. I just don't feel safe. That is somehow from the top down. Yeah, okay. No, here's what happened. These companies are in charge of their own policies. I don't know if Ben Shapiro knows this, right? And if they find that being in favor or allowing a certain policy is going to lose them customers, um, then to me, it would make sense that they would change that, right? I mean, that in essence is sort of the argument that libertarians use about the free market and also free market conservatives like Ben Shapiro. Well, I mean, if the company faces backlash from the consumers for doing something that the consumers don't like, they will pressure the company to change their policy, and the company will change that policy. Well, that's capitalism, baby, right? And it's interesting to see Ben Shapiro now suddenly being against that core tenet of capitalism. But look, here it rings true, right? I mean, you can kind of liken this entire thing to when there are companies and bars and restaurants that have started to ban smoking on their premises, right? Banning cigarettes. Um, it's something that they decided that would be in their favor monetarily because these companies, they look at the cost benefit analysis more than anything else, right? And they think, okay, is this a good policy? Is this going to cost us money? Is this going to be made up in good PR? What's going to happen? And these companies make the decision based on money. I know it's shocking that these companies don't actually have a moral center, but in reality, their moral center is really predicated on how much money they receive and how much good PR they receive from their decisions. I know it's shocking that corporations are not people, but that can also lead them, if the public feels a certain way on an issue that is more progressive, that can also lead companies to be in a more progressive position, to take a more progressive position. Look at Colin Kaepernick. That's another, that's a good example. Um, there are other companies. What was it? Airbnb. They thought, hey, if we show that we're more representative and more, I guess, progressive, diverse, then that's going to be good for us and our business. And it just happens to be more progressive. Wonderful, wonderful. And of course, there are reactionaries on the right that are like, how dare you? How dare you, corporation, decide to do what's best monetarily for yourself that happens to be politically progressive? Yeah, I can't believe you're politicizing this. These are the same people that, by the way, are like, I stand with Chick-fil-A. Or I stand with Hobby Lobby, banning the birth control. Yeah, okay. Yeah, have it your way, man. So now Ben Shapiro, again, he's one of those people saying, how dare you? And that is the height of irony. And that irony did not go unnoticed through social media. Let me give you some tweets here because these are all great because they're dragging Ben Shapiro. Pam Key said, "It's called the free market capitalism, Ben. Used to be a fan of it. I spend my money with companies that don't harm me and my loved ones," which is like everyone. Companies that hurt people lose business. Again, that is a free market ideology. This is not new. Why the whining? Weren't you anti Nike a hot second ago? Oh, that's glorious. Holly Figueroa O'Reilly said this: "How's listening to consumers bad for capitalism, Ben? The vast majority of Americans want gun control. Even the majority of Republicans want background checks." Let me give you some numbers on that, by the way, because we do facts. We believe in facts here. The latest NBC News Wall Street Journal survey, it was back in August, so last month, before some of the most recent shooting, because we have a mass shooting every week or so in America. That's Tuesday. The latest poll found 89% of Americans favored expanded background checks for gun purchasers. 76% support so-called red flag laws that are used to identify dangerous persons and deny them access to a gun. 75% actually favor a voluntary buyback program in which the government would purchase firearms from current owners. Again, stress on the voluntary part. If you want to sell your AR-15 back to the government, then they will allow you to do that. And then they will destroy those firearms. And a full 62% of Americans, and you would think that this would be the most, an assault weapons ban would be the most, I guess, controversial part. 62% of Americans favor a ban on the sale of semi-automatic weapons, or commonly known incorrectly as assault weapons. But okay. She finishes that tweet by saying, "This is a bad take. Enjoy your ratio." Fun little bit of snark at the end there. Tarvis said, "Corporations buying politicians, everything's okay. People boycotting because politicians no longer represent them, so they exercise their collective power elsewhere. Danger to society." So says Ben Shapiro. Don Moynihan says, "Tired. The right is getting better at comedy. Wired. The left has discovered the free market." Look, most of us progressives believe in the free market, right? We believe in capitalism, social democracy, right? Even democratic socialism can't exist without a market as well. Now they say free market, but in reality, we don't have a free market here. There is no such thing as a free market, because that ends up turning into massive oligopolies and things like that. Hey, we're kind of living in that right now, even though we do have regulations on corporations. But they basically purchase the government to knock down as many regulations as they can. And so that's interesting. But no, generally, like, again, progressives, we believe in a form of regulated capitalism, along with basically a strong welfare state, like the social democracies that we used to have here in America, by the way, and now are more prevalent in Europe. Nordic style social democracy. Just I figured out I would have to explain that, because there are some people out there that still don't quite get what progressives believe in. They think, "Oh no, you must be communist." No. Even the so-called democratic socialism that Bernie Sanders says he's in favor of is actually just a social democracy. But anyway, now Daniel Rifkin said, "Congrats to the left on inventing the radical new concept called pressuring businesses in 2019. How do markets work? Towering genius of the intellectual dark web." And we've got more. Nate Watkins says, "By what logic is consumer pressure top down?" That would appear what they're talking about would appear to be the antithesis of top down. Consumers actually pressuring corporations. But look, we know who butters Ben Shapiro's bread. Okay, we know the right is awash in NRA money, and as a consequence, awash in the blood of people gunned down in schools and or Walmarts. So I got to ask the question of how much more we as a nation are planning on enduring before we actually pressure our politicians to do something. And by the way, nobody's saying take away the guns. Even that banning semi-automatic weapons, right? Thing is a little 62% of Americans favor a ban on the sale of semi-automatic weapons, but only 25% say ban handguns. So that's an interesting dichotomy there. And so I don't know if that question was asked fairly or correctly, but generally I think what it was is that they're talking about semi-automatic assault style rifles in that question. But again, nobody's saying take away all the guns. If you are worried about home defense, there are handguns, there are shotguns. Those are good for both personal and home defense. And in a lot of places, you can still concealed carry, even in a Walmart. This is just talking about open carry. That's all it is. This is a store saying we don't want you to open carry in a Walmart anymore. Because look, here's the thing: if you're you don't know if the guy that's open carrying a rifle or a pistol on their hip is a good guy or a bad guy. He might be a good guy. He might be a perfectly reasonable person who's just worried about their own defense. I get that, right? But we don't know. And more importantly, neither do the police. Police don't know. And so, look, that's why in El Paso, there were a lot of people that had guns because it's Texas, but yet nobody shot back. Why is that? Because nobody knows who the good guy is or the bad guy is when the bullets start flying. At this point, if you're not a police officer, you don't have a uniform on, or you're not, a person in the army that's got a uniform on to identify you, you are potentially the bad guy. Okay? And so not to mention too, when the bullets start flying, if you're in the middle, I mean, that's a dangerous situation to be in. But as I said before, how much more are we going to take? Mass shootings happen every week. It's Tuesday essentially. And their American people are pretty tired of being murdered in the streets, in our schools, in the movie theaters. Also, people like Ben Shapiro and the rest of the pro-NRA, right-wingers that are not with the American people, not even with the majority of Republicans on the issue of guns, can continue to get a paycheck. Something is going to give. I don't know what. And I hope it's not violent. But something is going to give on this issue. I hope that the majority of people who believe in common sense gun reform will win out. They will assert themselves and are able to bring enough pressure to bear, not just on these corporations like Walmart, but on lawmakers who can actually do something about this. But unfortunately, as long as our lawmakers continue to be weak and bought by these special interest groups like Mitch McConnell, I don't see a lot happening. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.